Welcome to Performance Upgrades. I'm your host, my name's Dave Moss. Today's show is going to be focused on changing the exhaust on our 08 GSX-R600. So, what we'll show you today is how to dismantle your stock system, then how to remove it correctly from the bike, then take a look at all the componentry we have for the replacement aftermarket exhaust, how to mock it up on the bike to make sure everything works cleanly together, and then how to secure it to the bike so that the job's done and finished. It's actually quite a convoluted process, so this show is going to be very detail oriented. The other thing, we'll have a little bit of fun and take the stock exhaust, put it on the scales, see what it weighs in at, and then compare it to the aftermarket exhaust and see what kind of weight saving we've got. So obviously a ton to get through today with the show, so let's get started. So what we thought it'd be fun to do is go ahead, fire this up. We already pre-warmed the bike to 170 degrees, and we'll rev it up a little bit so we can see what the ambient noise, just the regular noise out of the exhaust is. Then once we're done with the M4 system and we put that on, we'll go ahead and do exactly the same thing. Now what would be kind of cool is to have a decibel meter and do all of that, but nobody has those lying around in their front room, so we'll do it the fun way. We'll fire it up, rev it up, see what it sounds like with the stock pipe. But again, if you're going to do this, the motor's got to be at least at 160 degrees and been there for a good 5 minutes. Let's go ahead, rev this thing up a little bit and see what we got. We'll go to 8,000, we'll rev it to 12, and then we'll take it all the way to 15. That was right at 12. And that got the rev limiter 1. So now we've got a good feel for how that sounds. Let's take the bike back in, strip it down, get it ready. So now that all the bodywork is off the bike, we can see what we're looking at for the job in hand. So it's pretty important to go through all the things here to see what we're going to need tool-wise to take this apart. So on the back of the bike, we obviously have the attachment here on the passenger footrest for the rear exhaust mount. There's a clamp under here, so essentially this component's a slip-on. That has to come off and be removed. We have a bolt here holding the catalytic converter to the frame. That's got to go. We have the exhaust management cables here which open and close the valve for full throttle. This has to be detached and removed. Now, the important thing to remember here is if you are using this bike for track use only and race use, then you want to take both these cables and follow them all the way up and remove them completely, because you'll never put these back on. If you're putting the exhaust on and you're going to put it back to street, I know some tracks around the country, for example Laguna Seca, require you to run stock exhaust. You're going to need these cables in place so the exhaust and the engine can function how they were designed. So when you see you have this valve assembly, most modern sport bikes do, assess whether you're going to remove these cables completely or leave them basically zip tied in place out of the way, because you may need them later. We're going to undo the radiator mount up here, so the radiator's got some flexibility on the hoses to swing it forward, give us a little bit of room to go through, and that will allow us to get to the top with the Allen bolts to remove those, and then we can take the exhaust away. So with what we have basically two components: the rear slip-on first, then undo all the connections here with the cables, etc., then undo the head, and lastly undo the cat here, and then we should be able to slide the whole piece out from behind the radiator down and move it out the way. Then we'll go weigh this stock system versus the aftermarket system we're going to put on. Hopefully we've got them right out. Now at this stage we've gone ahead and dropped the radiator. Ideally, in a perfect world, you would take the radiator off and remove it and get it out of the way, undoing two hoses this side, one on the other. but that means you've got to drain all the coolant and then go buy some more coolant and put it all in, start the bike up, run it till the thermostat opens and the coolant's taken out of the radiator, reset your coolant level. So it adds a huge extra dimension of work. In dropping the radiator away and using this 3/8 setup with a universal joint, I can get into the Allens and go ahead and undo all these bolts quite quickly and simply. And so I'm bypassing this step. Choice is yours. If you don't have the tools to be able to do this, then by all means remove the radiator, go buy a new coolant, put new coolant in, follow the procedure required for that, and then you can finish the job up. But for the sake of today, and if we were doing this any other time, I would always do it this way. It's just a lot easier and a lot faster.
I got a flow to move the traffic. You ain't know my words like green lights. What I say go, cause I say so. But I lay low and I stay blow. Ask anybody around, they know speed easy. One ready?
Yep. So now we're at a point where the exhaust mounts have been taken out. You may have studs in here with nuts on, or you may have bolts. Now if you have studs, the exhaust is going to hang on the stud and you're going to have to push it forward, which is why either removing the radiator or pushing it forward, getting it out of the way is so important. On this particular model, we just got bolts. So the flanges will drop down. We're ready to go here. The next part is pretty important. When you take out the bolts from the cat, this is the heaviest part of the exhaust. So take one side out first, and then when you take the second side out, you want to support it. Now there's lots of things you can do with that. You can use a jack, you can use yourself, you can have a buddy over to help you. But you want to make sure that this doesn't suddenly just drop on straight down onto the bench. So the other thing we're going to do is make sure that everything is out of the way so we can put the system down. Then we can go ahead, take it over to the scale and weigh it.
Am I holding it from this side back here?
Are you rolling? Okay, so we have the intrepid Mr. Williams on the other side holding the front while we remove the bolts here from the back. Now technically our exhaust is completely loose. Underneath is free, so with a little luck, this should pop. Is there another bolt on the cat we missed?
Yes. Yes, it's on this side.
Why don't we do this?
So the other part of this problem is that we have a fuel, as the bike's fuel injected, we got a closed loop system.
All right.
Now we don't want to overstress this wire. So in the interim, we tried to see if we could unscrew it without having to undo it from under the tank, and in this case there's so few threads on it, 4, that we managed to turn this loose without having to go up and undo the tank, seat, etc. So bear in mind, this may be possible. Again, we've not done this before, it's a brand new bike to us, so we can get away with not pulling the seat and tank, which is awesome. That saves a ton of time. So the heaviest part of this exhaust is the catalytic converter, which is in the back. It'd be interesting to just cut this system apart, weigh this piece up to the cat and see how that compares to the other that we're going to put on, and then weigh the cat independently to see just how much this thing weighs. It's pretty heavy. All right, so we left the set. Obviously we don't have any accurate scales. We're over at a big industrial place here which ships all the time and obviously needs real accurate scales. So the 2 pieces of the exhaust which form the stock system weigh in at 23 pounds. That's a hell of a lot of weight. It'd be interesting to cut this apart and find out what the cat by itself weighs. Now we'll go ahead, grab our aftermarket exhaust, we'll lay it out on top of the scales here, see what that weighs in. We got a little side bet going, see how much weight we save between old and new. Let's see. All right, now we have our M4 system that we're going to fit on the bike today on the scales, but this is a complete system. So as a control, we can only weigh what we had before. These exhaust flanges need to go. The hanger and bracket needs to go. So we're now weighing in at 11 pounds. So we're saving over 12. So over 50% of weight is gone in this stainless steel system that we have from M4. Huge weight saving. Yeah, 12 pounds, huge weight saving. So let's get this back in the box, get back to the bike and start putting this on. All right, we have all the components, everything ready to go. We have a set of very comprehensive instructions here from M4. Best thing to do is read those before you get started so you know what you have to do in sequence. So step number 1, remove the stock exhaust gaskets. Do not throw these away. Keep them with your stock exhaust system. If you need to reuse these, you can. These are pretty sturdy, thick gaskets. So keep those with your system just in case for some reason you have to put it back on. Again, just keep everything together. So that's the first step. Now we'll go ahead and mount the flanges. So now what we've got to do is go ahead and install these. Now with the instructions, it tells us to install an O-ring into the spigot. There's a notch surface on the front edge, and there's also a retaining surface on the rear edge. And unfortunately, in the instructions, it doesn't say whether it goes here or here. Now, obviously, what we want to do is seal the exhaust port. So putting an O-ring on this side serves no purpose in doing that. So clearly, the O-ring goes on the front edge on the spigot, which then goes against the cylinder head, and that will provide us with a good seal so that we don't get an exhaust leak here. So if you're using the M4 or another system, before you assemble this part onto the bike, make sure if you have an O-ring supplied, where does it go? Look at it, put it up against the bike, make sure you've got what you see to be the correct installation if you don't have a picture, as we don't have with the M4 stuff. So now we'll go ahead and install these correctly onto the bike. What we need to do is assemble the front part of the exhaust. Now, the beautiful thing about these is they're all numbered from M4, so you know which pipe goes to which piece of the collector. So the first thing you want to do is a dry run. You want to piece all this together, use some WD-40 or a very thin oil, lubricate all the surfaces, all the joints, so that everything goes together. When you're putting a system on, everything needs to move, so it finds its natural resting place before you secure everything up.